Every year, around 500,000 new immigrants arrive in Canada from these top 10 countries, with the majority of them coming from India and China. However, the moment they step foot on this land, the rising unemployment rate, the unforeseen inflation, and tens of thousands of homeless immigrants are waiting to shatter their dreams.
Okay, we'll let you know later, or they're not looking for applicants right now.
I got one interview, but then it got canceled.
To give you a specific example, let's imagine you're heading towards Toronto and you want to rent a one-bedroom apartment. Now, the average income in the city is around $4,700 per month, and the rent for a bedroom apartment is around $2,500. Keep in mind that we're excluding transportation costs of about $156, $1,000 for groceries, and the cost of electricity with a heater to keep you warm in this freezing cold environment. The situation becomes worse when immigrants are selling their ancestral property to establish their future in Canada. In the Malwa region of Punjab, one youngster from every fifth house of the village has gone to Canada, and their parents have been able to arrange this process only by selling more than 50% of their entire land. But when immigrants notice the rising cost of living, they run out of words while talking to their parents back home. This is why you'll find more than 235,000 homeless people in the country. The experts said this number could be 3 times bigger, as a lot of homeless individuals do not choose to access the shelters. Some are living under the bridge, while others are finding pleasure in drugs. Moreover, 40,000 Canadians crossed illegally into the U.S. last year, and around 50,000 immigrants are leaving the country each year. You can also identify the current situation with this survey that was conducted by the Institute of Canadian Citizenship. According to their report, around 30% of the immigrants under 34 years of age are planning to leave Canada in the next 2 years. And their biggest reasons are the high cost of living, unrecognized foreign work experience, lack of employment opportunities, studies not recognized, discrimination, rent costs, and a poor healthcare system. That's more than 150,000 immigrants. But don't be disheartened by these chilling facts, because at the end of this video, we'll show you how Canada is making efforts to reverse this situation. To really understand the Canadian immigrant crises, let's begin with this map, which represents the amount of Canadian population that lives across the US border. Specifically speaking, the red color represents around 90% of Canadians who live within 160 kilometers of the US border. But as attractive as these numbers look, you might witness these red dots permanently disappearing in the coming decades. Between 2003 and 2018, the real estate prices in Canada increased by 337%. In 2011, the average price for buying a house in Canada was around 352,000 Canadian dollars. But now, according to the Canada Real Estate Association, the average home price stands at around 716,000 Canadian dollars. That's double the price in a decade. As a result, the home ownership rate in these regions has declined in the last decade. On the other hand, the average Canadian makes around $59,000 a year, whereas Canadian immigrants are earning around $39,000 a year. That's around 35% less than Canadian citizens. On top of this, to afford a house in Canada, an individual now needs more than $188,000 as annual income, which is around 5 times the amount of their income. And if you look at the current ground realities, an average Canadian is spending 67% of their income on mortgage payments. So the rest of the income is ready to be eaten by a 6.3% inflation rate. So even though an immigrant decides to set aside $20,000 for a house every year, then it could take 9 years for him to own a house. Keep in mind that we have included job layoff, grocery expenses, sending money to their parents, and monthly bills, which could add 3 to 4 years more to this period. But how is this possible in a country that has the 9th largest economy in the world, ranks as one of the lowest in the corruption index, and also guarantees housing under Article 25 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights? Because Canada was the one who helped in drafting the UN Declaration. Furthermore, real estate is responsible for a 13% contribution to its economy, the highest among the rest of the industries like manufacturing, mining, and finance. Well, this issue of unaffordable income is deeply connected with Canada's lack of approach towards business R&D and poor patenting approvals. According to a report published by Canadian economist Jim Stanford, an investment in business innovation increases productivity and revenue for the company, thus better payment for the immigrants. But since 2000, domestic companies in Canada have heavily reduced their investment in R&D. Jim found that in 2019, domestic companies invested less than 1% of their GDP in innovation. At the same time, the U.S. economy allocated around 4% of its GDP to R&D. The business environment becomes more discouraging when an individual decides to get their innovation patented in Canada. As per the World Trade Organization, an invention should be new, non-obvious, and useful to get patented. However, the courts in Canada have declared that an invention will be considered useful only if it promises to do what is written in the patent application. Due to such strict regulations, Canada is heavily falling behind its competitors. For example, in 2022, Canada received around 39,000 patent applications, but approved around 19,000 patents. In comparison, the United States received 418,000 patent applications and approved around 360,000. Furthermore, due to labor shortage and the city council refusing to approve new housing projects, the dream of owning a house has become an impossible task. Nevertheless, if we look at Canada from a different perspective, it also has a huge potential to either beat or stand side by side with the United States. Being one of the world's largest trading nations, in 2021, exports from Canada created $637 billion for the economy. And out of this amount, $391 billion originated from the United States alone. As Canada holds 13% of the global oil reserves, the United States is highly dependent on Canada for its energy requirements, because out of $391 billion in exports to the US, $163 billion came from mineral fuels and oils. Canada also beats the US in terms of the corruption index, as it stands at number 14 while the US stands at 24. This means that with more transparency and better government policies, Canada can beat the US much faster in the coming years. Lastly, real estate, finance, insurance, rental, and leasing contribute around 20.2%, which is the highest to US GDP. At the same time, for Canada, these sectors contribute around 20.7% to its economy, thus creating more opportunities for the Canadian population, provided inclusive measures are adopted by the government. Not to forget, the country is aiming for 1.5 million immigrants by 2025 and has also promised to build 400,000 homes annually in the next decade, because Canada needs immigrants to contribute to their GDP. So even if immigrants earn less than Canadian citizens, it's still a win-win situation for their government. Thus, in the coming years, we could see more immigrants living in Canada instead of forcing their way into the US.
Part of this plan is our $4 billion Housing Accelerator Fund.
So what are your views about Canada's struggling economy? Tell us in the comments section below. And if you want to know how Poland's economy is becoming Europe's next superpower, then click on this thumbnail and head directly to the video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to hit that like button. Thanks for watching.